Hi, this is Russ Bucher from ControlMyNikon. In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can capture a focus stack. Now, normally you capture a focus stack to help increase the depth of field in an image. In a macro shooting, your depth of field at smaller apertures is very small, maybe a millimeter or less, and you may need to cover many millimeters in depth of field. So we can capture a series of images, which then you can process with third-party software such as Zerene Stacker, and it combines them all together and gives you a really nice high depth of field image. Now, let's see how we can do that in ControlMyNikon. Now, first of all, some things that we need to set up in Tools. I've gone to Preferences here under Focus Stacking. I'm going to be using Zerene Stacker for a post-processing tool, and I've put the path to the Zerene Stacker executable here. And I'm not going to be using the Zerene Stacker watch folder functionality. If you put a check mark here, that will ensure that ControlMyNikon will put all the captured stacked images into one folder and will not change that folder name. Normally, when you capture a stack with ControlMyNikon, it'll make a separate folder for each stack. And another thing to look at here is live view. I want to ensure that we have some padding here for when we toggle a live view display. We're going to be going in and out of live view a lot as we capture the images. ControlMyNikon is going to be adjusting the focus of your lens, and to do that it needs to be in live view, and then when it captures the image it'll go out of live view and it'll toggle back and forth. Now if it toggles too fast, sometimes it'll basically hang. It's too fast for the camera and it'll time out within ControlMyNikon and will not finish the stack. So what you need to do then is increase the timing, and I find for a D7000 about 2000 milliseconds or 2 seconds is just about right. Okay, I'm going to close this, and I've also set up some keyboard shortcuts, and these really come in handy for fine-tuning the focus when you're trying to set up your focus stack. So here I've set the arrow keys on the keyboard so it can adjust near and far in the focus, and also adjust the focus step. And there's a separate tutorial on how to use live view and to adjust focus. Okay, I'll close this. Let's bring up live view. So here's our subject for the shoot. This is just some small miscellaneous flower that I picked off the lawn. It's about the size of a penny, so very small. I have a 105mm Nikon macro lens on, so it brings it out to approximately full frame here. I have the grid lines enabled so it can help me with composing this, but now it's composed, I'll just turn my grid lines off. And one of the things I want to do with this image is I want to see what the exposure is. Now if you have a D5100 or a D7000, a D800 or a D4, you will be able to use the live view live histogram functionality within ControlMyNikon. That basically means that you can go over here and see the histogram, and it looks like we're pretty good here. There's nothing blown out in the luminance channel. And I can go here to my outer exposure, and I can enable it and tell it to show me anything that is outside these values. So anything 11 and lower and higher than 244 and higher. So I could see a little bit of sparkling up here in red. I'm just going to change the color to make it show up a little easier. And what's happening here is ControlMyNikon is saying that this is getting pretty dark. Now it's not at a value of 0, so it's not a problem. You can tighten this up a little bit more. You could say bring it down to 0 and 255, and now it'll only show you things that are completely black or completely white. So in this case, the image is not over or underexposed, and we don't risk blowing anything out. Now I'm just going to leave this on. I like to keep it about off by about 10 on either side. And as we cycle through the different focus settings, you're able to evaluate the changes of the exposure as this occurs to ensure that you don't go outside an acceptable exposure range. Now you can also use the inner exposure to ensure that certain parts of the image are in a correct range. And in this case, it will show you parts of the image that are between this value and this value. Okay, I'll just turn that off. Now there's a lot of colors here. When we turn these on, it's tough to see. So what you could do is you can go up to the image and make it grayscale, or even reduce the opacity of the image, or even disable the image, and you can completely see now only the highlights here from the different layers as exposed by the exposure inner and outer. So I'll put my image back, ungrayscale it, and I'll turn these off. You can use the autofocus to focus. So if I focus there, focus is fine. If I go over here, focus is good. If I focus in the middle, there's a little less contrast. Let's see how it does. It does okay. How about way out here? Not much contrast. It hunts, but it did find something. And these are some leaves that are further back on the back of the flower. So we're looking now at as far as we want our focus to go away from the camera. Now if I bring it back close, this is about as near as we want it to go. And you can see that the focus really went on a tour there as it hunted for the correct focus. Now when we do a focus stack, we want to define a range of focuses from the near part of the flower to the rear part of the flower. And we're going to take a series of images and adjust the focus backwards and backwards after each image. We're going to take those images and combine them together. Now you can see here we're at f4.5, and if I was to take a shot here, it just does not have enough depth of field. I want all of this in focus. I want the near parts here, I want these leaves in the background to be in focus, but f4.5 just can't do it, so we need to combine it. Now if we increase the aperture, it can increase distortion within your image, and as soon as you go above f8, your quality starts to decrease quite a bit, and that's why we focus stack. We use the optimum apertures to ensure that you have the best quality images. So let's try to find the range of focuses that we need for this. Now I'm just going to expand this window out a bit. There we go. So to do this, we need to bring up the focus pad. Now the focus pad allows you to just left click and drag your mouse here, and that's going to change the focus. So we need to explore this image to find out the near part, which is right about in here. When we start our stack, we don't want everything perfectly in focus. We want to start just a touch out of focus, and we'll slowly move into focus and then continue through the stack. That way you've given yourself just a little bit of a buffer in case you've missed something. And then we're going to progress further down until we start seeing all these leaves here in the background, or those petals, in focus. So this is what it's going to look like. We'll start way back here, then it'll go backwards. Now we need to know what the step and the slices are for this. So when I go to focus stacking here, we need to enter the step and slices. And this is an additional delay that you may want to use to allow recharging for your strobes. I'm using 2 continuous incandescent lights here in this example. So I'm just going to stop using the focus pad here and go to my keyboard shortcuts because they're just a lot easier to use in this situation. I'm using my right arrow key now to change the focus. My left arrow key is changing the focus the other way. If I was to move the up arrow key, it decreases the step, and you can see the step is indicated here. So right now your step's going around 60, going into the 50s and so on. And once you get to about step 6 or 7, that's about as small as a step as it's going to move. Now, the bigger the step, the more the focus moves. So here's a step of 500. I'm going to press the right arrow key once. You can see it moved a lot. Press the left arrow key, moves a lot. You might be thinking, well, let's just use a large step and a few amount of slices. Problem is that if the step is too big, it could bypass areas of detail. So here we have these frilly little things on the flower in focus. I'm going to press a right arrow key once, and we're going to see how far it goes and see if it bypasses any areas of detail. And it went a long ways. I think it skipped over some areas of detail we need to capture. So I'm just going to use the keyboard here, decrease this. And I just know from experience when you're dealing with a flower about this big, that a step of 50 is a good place to start. Now I'm pressing the right arrow key, and you can see every time I press it, press it, press it, press it, press it, that as the focus moves, it's going through a pretty good range here, where if I was to capture all these movements and combine them in an image, I should have enough collected detail to be able to produce a final image of large depth of field. So now, next thing we need to do is we need to find the front of this flower. So I'm just using my right arrow key to explore it. I'd say I'd want to start right about here. Not where things are perfectly in focus, because quite often you'll miss one little thing here unless you're looking really close. So I always just give it a little fudge factor. I want to start right about here. And it's okay if you have some extra shots here that are out of focus. They'll just be rejected by the post-processing software anyways. Okay, now I'm going to press the left arrow key, and I'm going to count how many times I have to press this key to take me all the way to the back of the flower. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And here, this part is in focus, but there's still, we haven't got all the way yet. So we're at 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Still not there. 30, 31, 32. 33 definitely seems to do it. I don't see anything else sharp here. Okay, 33 images should do it. I'll call it 35. So 50 steps of 35. And you'll get to know this just from experience of how far a particular lens has to move and for how many slices to cover a certain distance. Okay, so this is 50 by 35. Now I'm going to bring the focus back, and I could either just step it the other way using my arrow keys. And when you're using your keyboard shortcuts, you need to be careful just where you are. So if I'm in here right now and I press my right arrow key, nothing's going to happen because this little edit box here is thinking I'm trying to edit. Okay, so what you need to do is just click somewhere else. And you can just press the tab key to take you out of there. And now your arrow keys work again. So I'm just going to use autofocus to bring us back. And now I'll come back even further. So I'll press my right arrow key. Okay, that's about before where I said we need to start. There's a little piece here that's in a lot of, that is quite detailed. I'm just going to zoom in on and take a look. What the heck is this thing? Oh, this part of the flower. I thought it might be a fuzz or something. Okay, well, we'll make sure we include that. Okay, so make sure I have the back of the flower good. Make sure that I'm focusing just in front of the flower. Okay, 35 should do it. So 50 steps of 35. Now we can test it before we actually capture. Let's say we want to preview it. Let's start, and is this going to simulate the capture? Preview. Slice 2, 3, 4. Now you can see it go through the range, and just watch here just to make sure everything is covered. We want to make sure by the time we get to our last slice that we really have captured the entire range of detail. It should be completely out of focus when I hit my slice number 35. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not bad. Okay. Now it'll attempt to return back to where it originally began. Now depending on the amount of slices, the steps you have, your success will vary on that a little bit. Depends on the lens. They can have a little bit of a little hysteresis or slap. So I might need to touch it up just a little bit to get the focus just right back to where you want to start. Okay, I think I was right about here. Okay, so this time we're going to try it for real. And I'm just going to turn my focus pad off for now. Just to give us a little extra room. And we'll start to capture. I have a check mark here to export it to Zerene Stacker, so all these images will go back out to Zerene Stacker, and we'll see what they look like. I'm capturing fine JPEGs for this right now. So let's give it a try. Now at any time, you can cancel this if it's starting to look bad, and then you can reset it and start over. Now the delay between shots is a combination of that padding delay that we had in our preferences screen plus this delay here. With continuous shooting, it's not too bad. You may need additional delay if you're using strobes to let them recharge. 35 shots is a lot of heat coming up for your strobes, and they need to recharge. I'm just going to bring up the image browser and see what we're getting. And you can see the very first one wasn't very far in focus. And as I started capturing this, you can see we're on slice 9 right now, it created a brand new folder for us. That's because in the preferences screen, I did not put a check mark beside use a Z. I did not put a check mark beside use a Zerene Stacker watch folder. So it creates a unique folder every time. And then it starts the numbering at 0. So that way it's very easy to keep track of the images that you're capturing per stack so they don't get mixed up. Now, the nice thing about this amount of integration is you can automate this. You could have Zerene Stacker set on a watch folder and capture your images and let's go for coffee, go for a walk, come back, maybe you capture 100 images. By the time you come back, your finished stacked image will be on the screen. So for now, it's just hands off. And we can see things getting further into focus. It's passed through the detail in the middle part of the flower here. Histogram still looking good. Now the setup I have here isn't very complex. It's just a simple flower. I have my camera laying flat on the table, a couple incandescent lights, not even on a tripod. I just try to isolate it so when I am typing on the keyboard or using the mouse here, it's not wiggling the desk that the camera is on. So you just try to keep that isolation to make sure it's not moving. Plus I chase the cats out of the room because they'll attempt to eat the flower as I'm taking shots of it. So coming up to shot 30 here, see where we're at. You can see this is now out of focus and we're on these back petals here. Looking good. Another 5 shots to go. Histogram still looking good. Okay, we saw a window pop up here, and here's Zerene Stacker. And it's dropped all these images into Zerene Stacker, and they're ready to go. And on the left-hand side here, you can just click on them. Here was the first one. You can see the focus was in front of the flower. It was very near, and then as you go down the list, we can see that becomes progressively more in focus. Until we get way down here. This is probably about the middle. and at the end. So it looks to me like we had a full range of focus here. The only thing I see here is a little bit of this. This is a little metal pin that's holding this flower in place. That looks like something I'll Photoshop out later. Now we just go up to the stack here and we say, as an example, we're to say align it and stack it using PMax. And we'll just let it process. And what Zerene Stacker is doing is it's looking at each one of those images and it's going to pull out the areas in each image that are in focus. And then it's going to take that and create a composite image. And it'll reject parts of the image that are not in focus. So over here you could see what it has built so far. We're only on image number 3 and it is taking the things that are in focus that were closest to the camera and saving those and discarding the rest. And as we go here you will see that this becomes clearer and clearer and having more depth of field. There's other options for dealing with alignment and different algorithms to create the stack, and I've basically selected just a very basic one here. On image number 13, this is image 13 that we shot. You can see some areas are in focus and not, and it's just pulling the information out that's in focus and adding it to this one. So you can see now already in this composite image on the right hand side, we're getting a lot of depth of field here. We're having a part of the flower that was nearest the camera in focus, and now we're starting to work back towards these little petals in the background. And these will become in focus as we move further down the list of images. Now this is making quite a difference. If we had selected less slices and a larger step size, you would notice gaps here. You would find parts of it that are in focus and some areas that just are not. And it just wouldn't look right. So you're better off to err on having a smaller step size and a larger amount of slices. Only 2 more to go. And now the processing is complete. So Zerene Stacker's taken all of these images here, pulled out all the parts that are in focus, and created this composite image. And it's done a pretty good job of it for the first shot. Yeah, all those parts that were close, very nicely in focus. And even the parts further back on the petals here are in focus. I like this macro because you couldn't really see those little hairs on it before, but you sure can now. Brings us right down to the pixel level. You can see there's good focus all around. Good. So this is a good first attempt at this particular flower. If I was to do this again, I would change the lighting a little bit to introduce a bit of shadows in here so you could see a bit more of the depth. But our goal really is to ensure that everything is in focus, and indeed it is. If you could just visualize this flower, this part here is probably the closest part to the camera, and this part down here is probably the farthest part. And as we look down this way, we could see that everything is very nicely in focus. I don't see any gaps here at all. So at that point within Zerene Stacker, you could save this image, and you could take it for further processing if you like, and you're good to go. Now within ControlMyNikon, you still have this folder of all these source images, so you could take these and still reprocess them and in your post-processing software as many times as you like until you get it looking just right. So that's it. That's how you capture a focus stack in ControlMyNikon. Happy tethering.